Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's great to be here and have such a full house. Thank you for coming. My talk today is on non-attachment and impermanence. And I always find doing these talks kind of interesting because I really have to plumb myself. Does it sound okay? My hearing's a little bit weird. I have to plumb my inner life to find it, to find things to talk about. And I just thought these were good subjects to start with. One thing that happened when I had radiation, my saliva glands were burned out. And so if I get hoarse, I'm going to probably be drinking a lot as I go. And hopefully you can hear me okay. I'll do my best. I had something happen to me the other day. I was driving in San Rafael, and I came up to a stoplight, and in the median was this older woman, and she was really thin, and her clothing were tattered, and she just looked like she was on the street. She had been living on the street, and she was holding up a sign, and it said, "I need money for my mother's hospital bills." Now, this woman was at least 10 or 15 years older than me. So she had to be like in her, like 80, 85. And I wanted to give her something. And I thought for a second, okay, what do I have in my wallet? I don't have any ones. I have a 10, but I don't want to give her a 10. And so I looked at the glove compartment. I found a nickel and 2 dimes. I thought, well, I'll give her that change. So I rolled down the window, and she came over to me, and I gave her. I said, I don't have much, but here. And I was lying, and I gave her the 2 dimes and a nickel, and she was just so elated and so happy. And we met, and it was just like magic. We both smiled, and she said, "I love your smile. Thank you so much." And of course, later I felt guilty. I felt I should have given her the $10. But, it was just such a moving moment to find that. And, this wasn't planned as part of my talk. And I just thought, well, this is kind of part of my talk because I really could let go of the idea of it having to be a certain amount. It could be just a small little gesture that really moves another person. And I just felt like I really met with her when I was there, or when that happened. Okay, so some introductory stuff. Upeka is a Pali word, and it translates to indifference and disregard. But as a Buddhist concept, it is neither. Instead, it is even-mindedness, non-attachment, and serenity. And it conveys that everyone should be treated impartially. I'm going to move through some stories and try and connect a common thread to the subject of non-attachment or letting go, and how impermanence plays a key role in dropping attachments. So why is it important to drop attachments, you might ask? Don't we need to attach to something to help see it through? I think making something an intention is healthier than an attachment. An intention to practice one of the precepts, like right speech, may be one. Attachments are more like something that leads you around versus you being in the driver's seat. Holding anger is a common attachment, one that most of us experience. Jealousy, lust, fear are other examples. Also, there are good things that you can be attached to, like happiness, peacefulness, bliss, wanting to have a good Dharma talk. Come on, we got to loosen up here. Wanting to have a good Dharma talk. These also can be a hook. Letting go of them can prove useful. I practiced my talk with my wife, Emily. She thought that some of the writings I reference are difficult to know if it's my comment or the writings. So I'll try to cue you when I start and end a writing. First, I'd like to read you how Sojin Roshi, my teacher, responded to Lori's question about dying. Note that he uses the first person pronoun. He uses I a lot in this. Sojin responded, I am able not to hang on to anything. That is my secret. I believed my teacher when he said, don't get caught by anything. I really believed it. And then not only did I believe it, I started to act it out. So that's where I'm at. Don't get caught by anything. I'm able to not dwell on something. The news is what the news is. My anger is what my anger is. That's all. And I try to do what I can to assuage my and everybody's anxiety. I don't have much anxiety. I'm going to die. I'm on my way. What should I do? Worry about it? Everybody does this. Nobody escapes. This happens to every single person that ever lived. What should I worry about? What's there to worry about? I'm just not that kind of person. That is what I decided when I was young. I said, I'm going to live my life all the way up to the end. And when it's time to go, I go. That's part of life. Life is death. So we experience it every moment. There we are. The next moment, there we're not. This happens every moment. That's the end of the reading. And that's one of Sojin's expressions of letting go or non-attachment and how he manifests it within. Now, another term that I wanted to clarify for people who are new here or maybe haven't heard this, but sesshin is a name for our long day or multi-day retreats. It's a name adopted from Japan, and I heard it translated as touching the heart. I'm sure there's other translations of that. I'd like to tell a story about sesshin, about something that happened to me. So this Zen student, me, enters the gate and checks the seating chart and then checks the job listings. You do this before each day begins to get your work assignment and seat and try it out. So, where was I?
Checking your work assignment and seat.
Okay. I see I'm assigned to be Zazen instructor. I look again, and I'm also assigned to be Fukudo. Fukudo is a person who keeps pace of the chants by drumming the wooden fish. I look again and see I'm assigned as a work leader. This is the person who assigns and follows up on work during the work period. My heart and mind are charged. How can I possibly do all these positions, I ask myself. I pause and wait outside for any arriving folks who come for Zazen instruction. While waiting, I take a piece of paper out and write down the names of the participants in sesshin. I start assigning positions that I know I need to fill for the work period. Still, no one has shown up for instruction. The session director, who assigns initial positions, is on the porch, so I approach him and ask, how can I do Zazen and be back for chanting and do the drumming position? The director suggests being brief in the instruction. Okay, I say. By now, I'm frazzled. I wait and wait, take a deep breath, and decide to do one thing at a time. That's all I can do anyway. I think doing Zazen or seated meditation helped me to drop that mindset. Nobody shows for Zazen instruction. Phew, one position down. I go into the Zendo for service and chanting. During the prompt for the chant, which is kind of like, we call it an ornament. It's kind of you're reciting the title of the chant. I take out the striker, and suddenly a big arm reaches over and settles on my shoulder, and the Doan says, "Lo Fukudo." It ended up the drumming was not needed for the noon's, but was not needed. It's only needed for the noon service. 2 positions down, all is well. Skipping ahead to the work period, and this task went relatively uneventful. The end of my positions. I go home that day and reflect a little on how funny it was. I had some angst about having to cover these 3 positions. Well, that's not it. The next morning, I think more about it, and it, in quotes, becomes this anger and pain that sticks with me. Finally, I decide to call the director and give voice to my troubles. After explaining how I mistakenly saw potential for problems and how later they resolved themselves, it became a mute issue. Yet I was still feeling I had to give voice to it. The director explained how he viewed me as a go-to guy for positions that are hard to fill. My sense of self inflated. And now the director, had just returned from a memorial for his mother and was frazzled himself. Ouch. Now I have more than a touch of guilt. That's kind of the end of it. We both expressed our respect for holding the positions. He apologized for overbooking work, and I voiced sorrow for his for over-exaggerating the conflict and his loss of his mother. I paraphrase Ron Nestor here. He once said, "Just trust the session director and do what he or she says." I see Sojin's expression of not clinging as a direct practice of just not picking up or hooking into all he encounters. My letting go is a bit more process-oriented. I don't see one as better than the other. I see them both as needed depending on the circumstance. I think Sojin would agree, but I don't know for sure. I have to say that having been around Sojin for so many years, I felt him embodying the practice of not clinging. You could just feel it in all his actions and demeanor. Here's a Zen story that I find Here's a Zen story that demonstrates finding peace through non-attachment or letting go. It's a Zen parable called Heaven and Hell. A tough, brawny samurai once approached a Zen master who was deep in meditation. Impatient and discourteous, the samurai demanded a husky voice, so the force, "Tell me the nature of heaven and hell." The Zen master opened his eyes. looked at the samurai in the face, and replied with a certain scorn, "Why should I answer a shabby, disgusting, despondent slob like you? A, a worm like you. You think I should tell you anything? I can't stand you. Get out of my sight. I have no time for silly questions." The samurai could not bear these insults. Consumed with rage, he drew his sword and raised it to sever the master's head at once. Looking straight ahead into the samurai's eyes, the master tenderly declared, "That's hell." The samurai froze. He immediately understood that anger had him in his grips. His mind had created his own hell, one filled with resentment, hatred, self-defense, and fury. He realized that he was so deep in torment that he was ready to kill someone. The samurai's eyes were filled with tears. Setting his sword aside, he put his palms together and deeply bowed in gratitude for the insight. The Zen master gently, with a delicate smile, said, "That's heaven." I love these Zen stories. That's what I think a lot of our grasping comes down to, something like the stories I offered. The fabrication in our mind and the clinging of them as if real. Sojin and Suzuki Roshi expression of "don't get caught by anything" is a practice we can all lean into. I'm not suggesting that we not say anything. You may need to speak up if in some way it helps the practice of not being caught by anything. I.e., my exchange with the sesshin director is a letting go several times. Once when I decided to do one thing at a time, the second when I realized my positions were complete, and finally when I spoke the next day to the sesshin director. Just have to bow to that. It was a turning moment. Now here's another reading, and it's from the Shobo Genzo, Zuimoki, that I found is kind of the reading doesn't really speak as much to it, but the footnote does. But I'll do the reading and the footnote. The Zuimoki book consists of Dharma talks of Dogen Zenji, who transmitted Soto Zen to Japan, and then, of course, it came to us. These talks were originally recorded by Koan Enjo Zenji, Dogen's Dharma successor. Dogen instructed, so here we go. Students of the way, let go of body and mind and enter completely into the Buddha Dharma. An ancient said, at the top of a 100-foot pole, how do you advance one step further? In such a situation, I think we would die if we were to let go, or we think that we would die if we let go of the pole, and so we cling firmly to it. Saying advance one step further means the same as having resolved that it would not be bad and let go of bodily life. How should we give up worrying about everything? Well, no, we should give up worrying about everything, from the art of living to our livelihood. Unless we give up such things, it's impossible to attain the way, even if we seem to be practicing earnestly as if trying to extinguish a fire enveloping our heads. Just let go of body and mind in a decisive manner. Now, the footnote is a Japanese term, hogen, which translates to let go of body and mind. So listen to this. Hogen in Japanese means to let go, throw away, give up, abandon, probably lay down. To turn the page. Lay down, etc. Someone asked Joshu, "I have nothing. How is that?" Joshu replied, "Throw it away." I'll say it again. Someone asked Joshu, "I have nothing. How is that?" Joshu replied, "Throw it away." The Pali term for impermanence is antika. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, it's the belief that all things, including the self, are impermanent and constantly changing. The first of the three marks of existence in Buddhist thought. The three marks are impermanence, suffering or dissatisfaction, and no self. So, in thinking about not getting caught or non-attachment, we have to bring in impermanence, I think. I view non-clinging and impermanence as complementing each other. If you can realize the impermanence of all states and all things, then non-attachment may become easier. How do I see that? We're all in an ever-changing swirl of events, causes, and conditions that we face moment by moment. If you're in a relationship with someone, you each turn and are being turned by each other. So how do you find your center in this swirl? I find that finding my breath in this activity helps me to put down what comes up, so I can look at it more clearly. Putting it down doesn't mean that, or means a lot of different things. It could be saying, "Can we wait to discuss this? Can we pause?" It could mean remaining open to what is happening or being said and deeply listening to the other person before responding. In the end, it's best to put it down and let go of your clinging in a world that is impermanent. How else can we stay present? Confusing as it may be, we have a choice. Live in your fabricated clinging, or set down what you're clinging to and embrace the present and open to what is. Big questions come up around war, exploitation, racism, environmentalism, and other of the world's problems. How do we let go of these when they are so harmful? I don't see that as really possible. But strictly speaking, to create an unbiased self, we do need to set them down gently and then pick them back up when necessary. Can you really create an unbiased self? Probably not. But through deep listening, you can try and do your best. You need to decide when to set it down and when to pick it up. It takes empathy to hear the other side. This is a topic much larger in scale than I have time to address or skill to do so. So I have another story. My 50th high school reunion. Letting go is fine, but I think it's nice to have context, to have friendship and community. I recently went to my 50th high school reunion, my first reunion in 50 years. I had folks come up to me and describe how they remembered me. 8 out of 10 men said they remembered me running in town with ankle weights on my legs. I did this to train for basketball. Maddie was my high school was my bus riding pal for most of grade school through high school. We commiserated on subjects we discussed, and we both recalled some of the same memories. One woman came up to me and said, "We dated as freshmen, and I broke up with you after one date." I asked if we danced, and she said yes, and we kissed. I said, "We kissed and you broke up with me?" Some vanity there. I mentioned this little story to say that letting go is not forgetting. It's more like setting down the attachments and moving on. The context of our history or interactions are important to learning how we arrived at the present moment and to have warm feelings. I experienced great warmth from my classmates, and the warmth I was giving was astounding to me. It's interesting because I left the East Coast, where where I was born, partially to escape the history of my past and to get a fresh start. I just kept in touch with family and let go of my high school friends. So going back to the reunion and reconnecting with them gives one hope of how resilient the connections are. I walked away for 50 years and then just picked up the thread of connection. Another practice of letting go is to let go into something. So there is a beneficial result. This sounds a bit like gaining idea, but maybe it is, but it's better than being caught. An example might be when you let go of fear into a sense of safety or a sense of relaxation. Forsaking the need to be right, that's the big one, or to have one's opinion justified can allow a person to settle into feeling of peace. Letting go of thoughts, letting go of thoughts might allow us to open to a calmer mind. By letting go into something beneficial, we can make letting go a bit easier. The 12th century Japanese Zen master Dogen writes, "Impermanence is itself Buddha nature." I'll say that again. Impermanence itself is itself Buddha nature. How do I see that? That deeply realizing the impermanence of life is the cornerstone of being free and impartial to life circumstances. I don't mean we ignore what we're facing. We just have the wherewithal to put things down in order to see. Somehow, I don't think this interpretation is enough. He's pointing maybe to his radical view that we are born with Buddha nature, and yet we need to practice to uncover it. As in basketball, practice is key to playing well and teamwork. So too, Sangha helps with the support to stay on the path. I want to say a little something about the Diamond Sutra. Carol, Susan, and I have been studying it for about 2 or 3 years. We're using Red Pine's translation, and we're about 3/4 way through. Now, that book is about this thick. The sutra is only like 50 pages. It's only like this big, but the commentaries are huge. And we only meet every 3 weeks, so that's the reason it's taking us that long. If I were to say anything about it, I'd say that Buddha is telling his student Subhuti not to cling to any concepts or mental formations. When I read it, I can see both the Heart Sutra and Dogen's teaching in it. I recommend it. I blow my nose here. I'd like to read something on impermanence. It's called "Do We Really Believe in Impermanence?" And it's by Carol Wilson. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of her. Don't raise a hand. Okay. Carol writes, "We respond like this, grasping to our own bodies, to people we love, to our relationships changing, to losing a job, even down to your knees starting to hurt in the middle of a sitting. Our basic response, even though we know all conditions are subject to change, is something has gone wrong and this is changing. If I can figure it out, I can stop it from happening. Isn't that often how we end up responding? And in that response, we suffer sometimes enormously. And even though I've seen it 1,000 times, it's still not so easy for me to get the fact that the suffering is not about the change itself. The suffering, if you get right down to it, is about my reaction to the change. It is my denial, my lack of acceptance, my basic not wanting to feel pain or loss. I'll pause for a second. I'd like to pause this reading of Carol's to stress the importance of Zazen. I see it as a gateway to how attachment and aversion can arise and drop away. I didn't say that right. I see it as a gateway to how attachment and aversion arise and drop away. How do I see that? By taking your seat and simply allowing mental attractions and mental aversions to come and go freely. So more on Carol. Carol continues, why are we conditioned the way we are? It's a habit of mind. We crave the pleasant and can't stand to have something we don't like. Here we're stuck. It's not the truth, but it's our habit, and it's a deep habit. We cling, even though we all know rationally that the problem is not the change, the problem is our clinging. But that doesn't stop us for 1 minute. It's our very grasping at phenomenal experience as it passes, the external or the so-called internal, are looking always for a resting place that provokes the suffering in our life. It can be very hard to recognize, but freedom comes not from finding somewhere to rest, but from no longer needing to look for someplace to rest. There's a wonderful quote in the Diamond Sutra which says, he abides in peace who does not abide anywhere. That's the trick. To give up the search for abiding or resting and to stop the flow somewhere. The search that actually keeps the sense of anguish going. It's the search itself for somewhere to rest, usually in the pleasant, not the present, the pleasant, that is profoundly unsettling. So the most we can do is abide in this moment, just as it is, without clinging, without resistance, because in the next moment, there's something else. It's all part of the flow. In other words, there's no fixation, there's no landing, there's no yearning, there's no grasping of any experience. When you are not this, when you are not in this, nor in that, then you're not abiding anywhere. There's only the simplicity of experience, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing, feeling the body and mental activity, the present moment. That's the end of her write-up. Pretty lengthy, but sorry about that. I know grasping for things to be difficult all too well. Post-cancer treatment has left me in a real not knowing state. This should be good for a Zen student, no? Not knowing is most intimate. It pulled the rug out from my identity. What I fabricated before cancer was a shining, helpful practitioner. Now I have to let go into being okay with being just okay, being me with whatever comes up. This shifted my view in a matter of weeks. So there is my life koan to practice with now. I'll finish with this one thing. My koan in the spring 2022 practice period was disease and medicine subdue each other. The whole world is medicine. What are you? I'll be bold and say, we, we are the embodiment of the whole world, the cure for the whole world by not clinging, not attaching, letting go. And we are the disease, clinging, attaching, holding on. That's all we are. That is you. I can see Unman's nostrils flaring and saying, no, no, no. That's all I have. Any questions? I think we have some time.
We do. We have about 15 minutes for questions. I'll bring this mic around, and if you see folks online, feel free to ask them as well.
Okay. Oh. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Gary. Thanks very much for your stories. Really kind of enlivening. And I need to apologize for my phone going off just then. It was interesting, the coincidence that I was just thinking about it. Maybe I should turn it off. But what I really wanted to ask you about was there was one part early in your lecture where you read something that Susan had written or said or something like that in response to a question from Lori.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wondering what that question was.
Oh, it was, it was just about dying.
Oh, just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
The question Laurie asked Sojin was, now that you're diagnosed with cancer, has anything changed about your feelings of death, about death?
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, Ross.
And what was his reply? I wasn't here to hear it. I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
What was Sojin's reply?
What was his response?
Response.
Oh, it's pretty long. I can give it to you later if you.
Oh,
it's okay.
Okay.
Sure. Ross?
Hey, Gary.
Hi.
At the beginning of near the beginning of your talk, you spoke about intention, and I'm wondering if you could talk about the difference between intention and attachment. You mentioned intention briefly around the.
Yeah, I think of intention as a bigger vow, kind of to move in a certain direction, where attachment is more like something you're grabbing onto and want, and you will not be happy unless you achieve it. Where intention is more like, well, I'd like to practice right speech, and I'm going to, I may make mistakes in my speaking, but that intention does not end just because I made a verbal foobar. Okay.
So it sounds like setting the intention is like an orientation and practice, and then if the intention is found or realized, then that is a setup like for attachment. Like, this is what I intended, and now I've got it. Something like that.
Well, it can. Yeah, your intention can become an attachment, I guess. If you, but I would think generally an intention would be something that's wholesome, that you want to practice something that um, that's kind of helpful in the world. It's a good question. I haven't thought that deeply about it. Maybe it's better to define attachment. An attachment might be something like a strong greediness and desire, where an intention is more like
Maybe not greedy, not desirous.
yeah, to be not greedy, not desire, not to strive. It's tricky because you do have to work at certain things to achieve certain, like in the arts or in public speaking or whatever. So there is.
We need to work on that together. Thank you, Gary.
Sure. Yes. I'm sorry. And then Margot.
Gary, has having had cancer changed your practice toward impermanence?
What was the last part? Changed my practice?
Toward impermanence.
Oh, how has it?
Yeah.
It made me see how unimportant some things we do or how certain things are so really dumb that when you're kind of in the throes of life and death, you kind of feel, why are you worrying about that? What is the big deal? So it kind of made me see. I'm having trouble answering questions today. To not get so caught up in things, there's more important things than these trivial matters. It kind of showed me that. Is that good? Yeah. Marco?
I was wondering if you could speak about this kind of how you hold this welcoming of some kind of memories or some context for your personal history and some idea of like how you arrived in this place, if that makes sense. And also, what Dogen talks about in Zazen, of like Zazen as this vow of like completely dropping the body and mind. Oh, yeah. Sorry. My question is about, or I'm wondering if you could speak about what you touched on with holding some idea of personal history and our memories, and, like connection, and like following that thread of connection with some of what Dogen talks about as Zazen is like this vow of dropping everything, and how those two things kind of show up in your life, although they might seem.
I see what you're saying. So kind of like the non-clinging and your personal history. Like, how do you balance that with Dogen's drop everything, drop body and mind?
Yeah.
I just see it as dropping body and mind is impermanent too. And you need to have context throughout life to make decisions. So it's almost like the relative and the absolute have to are an interplay there. The relative being context. I need context and understanding, and I need to deeply listen, and then the absolute, dropping into, dropping into emptiness, dropping into letting go. That's how I see the two playing out. Okay. Good question. Joe. Oh, we got some online.
I wanted to follow up on your response to Cheryl. What are the important things? You said in response to what did you learn from impermanence that some things were trivial, a lot of things that were trivial.
Oh.
What is it? What was important? Like the things that you saw were trivial. What was it that was left? What was it that you found important?
Oh, well, taking care of my body, taking care of my mind. I have anxiety and sadness and stuff around it. In some way, I feel separate because of cancer. I found that kind of separateness, and it's hard for me to feel apart. Not a part, not apart. It's hard for me to feel apart. I don't know if I'm not really answering your question now, am I? So I have to work at that. And if you see things as being trivial, and why should you worry about that? That separates you in a way.
Sounds like taking care of your life is
Yeah.
what was important.
Right. And everybody around me, in my life.
That's your life, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, we have someone online here. Nick?
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
I was impressed.
Robinson. Okay, how are you?
I'm doing good. I was impressed that you spoke up to the session director and told them about your experience with your job assignments.
Yeah,
and, you could have said to yourself, I'm just attached to some expectation or desire I had for how my job assignments would play out. And you could have told yourself, just, Gary, let go of that, But instead, you saw an opportunity to make some kind of connection.
Yeah.
And to give voice to your experience. So my question is, how did you get there? How did you choose to do that?
Well, I was sitting in the living room. We have a small living room. I was sitting there with my wife, and I was saying, it bothers me what happened. And she said, well, why don't you call him, talk to him? Why don't you talk to him? And I said, I thought for a while about it. And then I said, yeah, I am going to call him. I have to admit, Rob and I go to breakfast every once in a while. He was the session director for that. And so it wasn't that hard for me wasn't like a cold call that I didn't know the person. So, but I also felt like this could really separate. I was worried that this could really cause separation between him and I, because I like having friends, right? Everybody does. And so I was careful about it. I wasn't, so that's kind of how that's how I got to it, in a sense. And I found it worthwhile. And I also asked him before I put it in the talk if it would be okay, because I felt like he might not want me to to bring it up, and he was fine with it. I don't know if Rob is online or not, but I told him that he's in the talk.
Thanks for that example.
Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, good job.
Okay, thanks. I see Nick swimming every once in a while. Don't be afraid to ask them, especially anything from the new people. Oh, we have the. Oh yeah, I can't see. One more question, and then we'll. Okay. Sure. Hey.
Hi, Gary.
Long time no see.
Long time no see.
Good to see you.
Up there. Should I take this down
Sure.
temporarily? Okay.
That will help me.
Just on the topic of your talk, thank you so much for your talk. This image of you cooking porridge for breakfast came to mind, and I don't really know what I feel like sometimes there was some playful response going back and forth with you and Sojin around breakfast and the results of cooking, and I don't know. So I just wanted to ask an open-end question if you have anything to share about the experience of cooking in our practice around non-attachment, or if any cooking polenta porridge for breakfast, and that came to my mind. That makes sense.
Well, I think I tend to cook where I have a recipe, and then I play with the recipe a little bit. So there's kind of an impermanence in about the amount of ingredients and kind of what can I get away with in not using this or doing that or adding this or subtracting that. That's one thing in impermanence. We're very schedule oriented, so we have times we have to meet, and I tend to work backwards in cooking. So I know I have to be done at a certain time, and then I see how I can fit all the pieces into that. So there's kind of an impermanence there. There's no clear, and I'm ready to adjust. That's a key thing, because it's like driving. Driving is so much impermanence going on. You don't know what's going to happen, who's going to come in front of you. Is that a good answer for you?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Gary.
Sure. Okay, we should finish up.